Hey, aloha everyone. Michelle Melendez with blossominnerwellness.com and standtogetherhawaii.com. This is also on the Voice of Kona Radio, 100.5 FM. Mahalo so much for joining. This is a live with John Singleton of Ace of Coins. He is the man that I've been telling you guys about when I'm talking to you about how to, if you want to lower or eliminate lawfully your taxes, if you want to own your own biometric data, your face, which is being used all over by big tech, these financial conglomerates. And if you also want to buy Bitcoin tax-free, this is the guy to talk to, Ace of Coins. So John, I'm so glad and excited to have you on today.
Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, I thought
So,
it was
oh, go
compelling
ahead.
about FinCen, right?
Yeah, so he talked about FinCen a while back, and we have some people on the live chat. Aloha, everyone. If you want to put in your any questions, if you could mute yourself too, that would be super helpful. That would be great. And just put in a chat. I'll definitely be looking at that. But John shared a little bit about, if people didn't watch the last interview I did with you in FinCen, who is FinCen and what's been going down?
FinCen is kind of operates in parallel with the Internal Revenue Service, and the Internal Revenue Service enforces FinCen findings. So they kind of work together. They're under the Department of Treasury. So FinCen they both have police powers, but Financial Crimes Enforcement Network is where the term FinCen comes from.
Okay, so what I understand about the Federal Reserve and the IRS, they're all privately owned. They're not even part of the government. So this
Okay,
is
right.
so what is FinCen? Is that part of the government? Is it privately owned? What exactly, where is it at with that?
Okay, all that may be true, but I don't talk about that. I act as
Oh,
if
okay.
these are government agencies. I know that they're just like, the IRS is the what do you call it? The Canada Revenue Agency. What is it called? CRA in
Canada.
Canada. It's the
Okay.
same thing. The
Mm-hmm.
IRS, it operates in Canada under a different name and in the States. Yeah, and it might be private. Who cares? I mean, the central bank is private anyways, so but the Secretary of
Yes.
the Treasury, I mean, okay, it's a function of government, it's publicly funded, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so Financial Crimes Network has access to the police power. That's all we care about. So Financial Crimes Network comes up with this scheme where they're gonna tell everyone he has to report his beneficial interest when he registers an LLC in a foreign government's jurisdiction, which is one of your 50 states. Okay, because
Mm-hmm.
FinCen operates outside of the 50 states. It's the federal government. It operates in the District of Columbia exclusively.
Correct.
All right.
Yes.
And it's involved in the use of dollars, so there is some jurisdiction there. However, it's interesting. They want to scare people into reporting what is known as beneficial owner information for limited liability companies when you register them.
Wow.
Right. So there was a period of time where the proposed regulations, so they do this through regulations.
Mm-hmm.
So there's federal statutes under the Corporate Transparency Act that comes under the National Defense Authorization Act that came in a long time ago, like 20 years ago, and they kind of morph in all these different provisions, right? And they just dialed in more and more and more every year. So when the
Yeah.
statutes come out, then the agency is supposed to write regulations to enforce the statute, to implement the statute. If you use mute all, it'll mute everybody for the background noise. You don't have to ask people, just mute them all
Okay.
because they're going to have all this background noise. I'd have to do the same thing on mine too. Um, so when I read the regulation, I thought, okay, well, guys, look, let's assume that you're required to do it. And this is what I said a year ago. I said, just don't do it. Just don't do it.
Hold on. Now I have to unmute you. Oh,
Yeah.
John
So I
Jay. There you
so
go.
I just told people a year ago. I said, let's assume that the regulation is binding on you. That means you have to do it. Don't. That's what I told them.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
yeah, as time went on, we approached the end of last year, and I said, okay, guys, coming up in January, I'm going to be the first one to register an LLC. I called it John J. Singleton LLC. It's in Florida. It's there. You can check it out. Look into sunbiz.org. You'll see it. And what I'm telling people is what I'm doing. Instead of just telling people, do this thing, don't do this thing, I'm doing it. And then I told people uh, at the end of last year and into this year, I said, I don't think that, assuming that the law has changed and creates a legal duty, I'm going to assume it's constitutional. I'm going to assume it went through all the public debate periods. through the Federal Register, and that they resolved all the constitutional issues, and it's completely legally binding. And with that assumption, reading the regulation, I'm going to tell you right now, based on what I read, it doesn't create a new legal duty to report beneficial owner information. And so I went through and I explained why.
Wow.
And so it turns out this came out it didn't last but 2 months. And I told people, I said, I'm telling you not to comply, and then I'm telling you there's no legal duty to comply,
I love
10
it.
months later. And yeah, and I said, this assumes that the law is constitutional. So I said, but I'm not just going to tell
Right.
you guys to do it and say, have a nice day. I will actually
Do
take
it.
on the liability. Yeah. I will be the corporate counsel, which makes me liable. Let's say you think your company, your LLC, has a liability. If I sign on as your corporate counsel, I become liable under the FinCen rules. That means I could face jail time and penalties of $10,000 per day or whatever nonsense they want to impose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of stupid. I told my wife, and she's like, honey, why did you do that? She was like really
Yeah,
scared.
yeah. Because you
And
know what you're doing.
I said, I'm right.
Yeah.
I said, I'm right. There's no reason to be scared. And even if I'm wrong, they're not going to be able to enforce it on me. And so I want to explain, and this is why I enjoy this interview, because I want to explain, guys, don't be afraid, okay?
I
Know
love
what's going on. Know what's going on. So I looked at this, and so there's a statute in the tax code that protects your taxpayer information. So that's your name, address, date of birth, your social security number, okay?
it. Mm-hmm.
This data. What's interesting is this is called taxpayer return information or taxpayer information. If you want to look it up, it's Title 26 of the United States Code, Section
Mm-hmm.
6103. Why do I
Okay.
say that? Because FinCen is under Title 18 and some other like Title 31 and whatever. So if you're required to disclose your beneficial owner information, what the heck is that? Name, address, date of birth, SSN. Okay, so that's the same information that's protected under 6103. That's called the taxpayer information. So they just called it the beneficial owner information. It's the same information. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have privacy rights under 6103, why would you have to waive them for some other reason? That would mean the laws conflict with each other.
Yeah, that's true.
Stop right there.
Wow.
It's so simple. But let's just say I'm wrong. So we get into this situation of, okay, who's a reporting company? It says LLCs are, okay?
Okay. Oh, you mean reporting? Okay. You're
Yeah,
reporting to the IRS or
yeah,
whoever. Yeah.
it says in the reg, an LLC is a reporting company.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so okay, so there happens to be 23 exemptions to reporting. So let's assume that every LLC that's formed now has to report, and all the old ones eventually have to report. But there's 23 exemptions. But we don't know if your company's exempt, which by the way, I'll tell you right now, your new LLCs, you're not exempt. But this is the funny part. Who cares? Because there's the question of whether or not your company is exempt. And the only way to figure it out is to do what?
I don't know. Go for it.
Waive your rights to
That was.
privacy and
Oh my
become
gosh.
a reporting company. So how can that be? The regulation conflicts with itself. Not
Oh
only
my
did
gosh. And
it's
you
so
know what?
simple.
And this is a game. I've said that so many times. This is a game. And what's amazing is you know the rules better than anybody that I know on taxes and seeing what ridiculousness that they're throwing at us. And that one is for sure because we do have a right to privacy, and they're basically saying that the LLC that you have to give that right up, which that is totally against the Constitution. And you,
Well, there's that aspect too, which I said, look, guys, I think the Constitution, I think it complies. I'm not even going to call it that. But as it turns out, it didn't last but 2 months. I told people, I said, look, they're paying me like $1,200 to be the corporate counsel, and they're going to get their value out of that. But
Mhm.
what I told them is all of them, and they still hired me. I said, look, you don't need to do that. There's no legal duty. But I said, I'll take on the risk if you think there's a risk. I don't think there is. And I said, we're going to know this year if I'm right. It only lasted 2 months. It's some lawyer after 2 months, only 2 months. This is lightning fast, okay, in the U.S.
Mhm.
District Court to get to a point where you can decide on a case of this type on a
hmm
constitutional issue in the trial court in the U.S. District Court, the judge said that it didn't serve national interest like they said. It's not going to stop money laundering. It's not going to stop
Yeah.
all those noble things. And the thing is, why haven't they been successful at doing it yet? They've had decades. Let's go back to World War II. They've not stopped money laundering. They've not stopped risk to national security. That'll never go away. So how is collecting this information from LLCs, new business owners that have no net worth, how is that going to protect the country against money laundering? The banks are your biggest money launderers.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you haven't solved the problem yet. You're not going to do it now. So it doesn't serve national interest. So you're lying. You're just liars, right?
Oh, but they're huge liars, though. I mean,
Yeah.
there's that. There, first of all, there's two constitutions, and the whole thing is a sham. Everything around this is a sham. But what I love about this conversation is like you're calling them out.
Well, on its face, I like to
Yeah.
look at the merits of it. On its face, it's ridiculous. It's
Mhm.
asinine. Okay, so then you have the other problem of who's going to be the reporting company. So we get past the exemption thing. Let's just say, you know, you're going to be the reporting company. All right, so let's say you tell your client, because you're the organizer, you tell
Mhm.
your client, you're going to collect his what? Beneficial owner information. Isn't that important data? That's like the most important data in your life, right?
Yes.
And you're being told that you're required by law to give it to the reporting company. And that company, that agent has to certify the correctness and accuracy of it, right? And he has to be responsible for collecting this sensitive financial data. Then he has to transmit it to the Financial Crimes Network. So how is he going to do that and protect the integrity of the data from a data breach? You're not.
Mm-mm.
You're
Can't.
not. Nobody is. You can't do it. You can't guarantee
Mm-mm.
that, right? But all you can do
Yeah.
is insure against it. All you can do is mitigate the risk. It's just like if you have a grocery store and you got the best staff in the world and you got the best flooring and stuff, somebody's going to slip.
Oh yeah.
You're going to have premises liability insurance. You got to have it. You're going to have a data breach. So how do you tell me that I have to perform a police power as a reporting company? I have to become something that I'm not. I have to perform a police function that's not delegated by your police power under the Secretary of the Treasury, and for which I'm not indemnified. I'm not bonded to exercise a police power, but yet that's like asking a private citizen to stand out in the street corner and check for speeders, and when he finds one, chase him down and write him a ticket. How's that going to play out? Not pretty, right?
No.
So how are you going to tell me that I'm running a business and all of a sudden I got to step outside of my profession, my expertise, my licensing, and I have to perform a police function for the United States government, and I'm not even functioning in the United States government. I'm in state of Idaho or something, right? There's that problem. Then I'm not protected. I'm not indemnified. So FinCen says you have to do this thing, doesn't have the right to delegate it, misuse of public
hmm
funds, and then it's not going to indemnify me against the risks that are involved with collecting this type of data. I have a now liability to the person who's giving it to me.
hmm
That's where I mean, even if everything else is good, that's where it fails. You can't tell me to perform a police function. You can't, even if you could delegate it to me, how are you going to indemnify me with public funds? You don't
Yep.
know me.
So did this went to court, you said. It
Well,
took two
okay, so
months.
everything I'm talking about, that was never brought up. I'm just saying, this attorney, he's not going to talk about all this stuff. He can't.
Yeah.
They need this underbelly, right? They need all this stuff going on in the background. They want you to waive your private property rights.
Yes, they
But
do.
what they will
Voluntarily.
do, yeah, what they will do on the surface is they'll talk about constitutional issues. Fine, fine. If you want to beat them on that, fine. So they did. So the judge said it doesn't serve national security interests. Now check this out. So it's the United States government, right? They're the biggest bully in the entire world.
Yes, they are.
They have, I mean, the United States military, its Navy, is being used around the world to protect countries against piracy. That's what keeps many countries in line to cooperate with the United States. These countries let our military come in their country and build up bases just because we do those things for them. It doesn't cost them anything. So how is it they have unlimited funds, unlimited resources, but yet they need you that you're going to register an LLC. They need you to give up your data, okay? But
hmm
they can't get it from a company that already has it. They cannot buy it from Intellius.com. Why can't they get it from there? Why can't they get it from, it's the Treasury, right?
Yep.
How do you get information under 6103? You have to ask the Secretary of the Treasury. If you go read the statute, it'll tell you. If you want taxpayer information, beneficial owner information, you have to ask the Secretary of the Treasury. And here's the criteria. You have to be administering a taxing statute. FinCen will do that. You have to also be investigating a crime. FinCen can do that too. Why can't it go to the Secretary of the Treasury? Because it's not doing any of that. It just wants your information just in case you might be a suspect in a crime sometime in the future.
Oh
You
my
can't do
gosh.
that. Yes, you can't do
Wow.
it. So that's why the FinCen cannot go to the IRS and get the information. It has to trick you and coerce you into thinking you have to do
Oh, trick you and coerce you. Where have we heard that
it.
before?
Yeah, yeah. So
Right?
I mean, look at it this way. Let's say, so instead of getting the information from Intellius for pennies, they're going to write this draconian law that says you have to do this thing, right? And there's this huge, excessive penalties, right? Ridiculous. 5 years in prison, $10,000, all this nonsense. Well, wouldn't
That
it
should
be?
be also a sign right there.
I
If
mean,
it's
yeah,
ridiculous penalties, it's like, oh,
yeah.
wait a minute, they're
If,
not doing something right.
if there's a dispute, right? If they're going to put on somebody, don't you think that person's going to be fighting for his life and he's going to hire lawyers? He's going to pay $100,000. He's going to do all kinds of stuff, right? What do the
Mhm.
costs of litigation look like? Outrageous for just for one case, right?
Mhm.
So why not just buy the data from Intellius, who already has it? Why not go get it from the Treasury Department? Why not go get it through the Treasury? You're already part of the Treasury because the cost of that is almost nothing. It's free.
Mhm.
But no, you're going to create the risk of litigation that's going to be in the millions of dollars a year, billions probably, because of all these people you're going to attack
Mhm.
for not. Because a lot of people are saying, "I ain't doing it." They don't even know.
Good. Good
They
for
don't even.
you. That exactly
Yeah,
right what we should
you
be
should.
doing.
They
Do
don't
not
even know that it's
comply.
not required. They just think it's
Mhm.
required. They're saying don't comply. I mean, that's what I thought in the beginning. I thought, oh well, maybe it is required. Just don't comply. And then when I read it more and more and more, I'm like, wait a minute, this conflicts with itself. There's no duty here.
That's fantastic.
So, anyways, it was funny because it lasted 2 months.
Wow.
So, what are they going to do now? I mean, they already went through what? How was it? A year and a half of public debate. You would think they had resolved constitutional issues by then. I mean, really, it's such an obvious one. How do you go and collect, like, for example, the police come to your house, knock on the door, say, hey, we need to know, first of all, your name because we don't know who you are. The police. Okay, so
What?
you would just laugh, right? I mean, most people,
Yeah.
you should be laughing,
You should
but
be
but
laughing,
but not
everybody.
only that, they say, oh yeah, and once we get your name, we need to know your date of birth, and also we need you to give us your fingerprints, just in case you might be a suspect in a crime, so that way we can match your fingerprints with the crime scene. Yeah, I'm gonna stand in line for that one.
Yeah. Which, you know what? A lot of people who don't understand their rights and the fact that standing up for them and not complying, they would stand in line. So, those of you watching, that's not you guys, because you guys are
I hope not,
amazing.
please.
If you've been
Yeah.
following John, you guys have got to know that what he's definitely the real deal with all of the stuff. Well, John, that's fantastic. So, what happened after that? That's
Well, that's it. I
amazing.
mean, right now I'm wondering what's going to happen. So they went through all this whole process, and to come to an abrupt halt after only 2 months of implementation, what does that look like? I mean, really, the top people should be fired and fined.
Absolutely. Oh, I love
Never,
that.
never to do it again. Stop this nonsense, guys, and stop all this stuff about 25% interest. Who made up that number? 25% interest in your company. Now you have to disclose all this information. Come on, don't treat me like a suspect in a crime, and don't use the
But
banking
that's what they
system.
want. They
Well,
want
yeah,
us to live in fear. They want us to be in
yeah.
fear, and they want us to be giving up all of our freedoms, and they want to be giving up all of our money to them.
That's
But
what
you
it
know
is.
what? Yeah, I
Exactly.
really appreciate you for standing up for this, because this is amazing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah. I'm
Do
okay.
you guys have any
Yeah.
questions? Anybody on the line who want to have any questions? You can just put into chat, or just comments on how amazing John is as he helped you. You guys can put that in there too. Again, this is John Singleton with aceofcoins.com. If you have an LLC and you want to know how to protect yourself, if you want to know how to lower your taxes or eliminate your taxes lawfully, if you want to know how to license your biometric data, which is being used, your face, by big tech or by cryptocurrency tax-free, this is the man, aceofcoins.com. And yeah, let's see. Anybody
Uh,
have any comments or questions about this? This is good
We'll
stuff.
we'll see, but you guys can interrupt me, but I'll tell you a quick story. A recent case I had about with a few months ago, about 6 months ago. something outside of my normal experience, but it was a small business, and the seller of the business had been accused of a crime. And so the seller of the business was out of the picture because he sold the business. And then the new owner got a letter because the new owner was using the old owner's business name. So I think it was the prosecutor's office for the state or the county sent a letter accusing the new owner of having culpability for the previous owner's alleged crime. There was no conviction or anything. I mean,
Oh my
and
gosh.
there's some sort of a connection there, but they're trying to fabricate something. So what they're trying to do is scare you into just, giving up information, right? So before they responded, just happened to be, it was somebody I knew. So he said, "Hey, what do you think?" And I said, "Oh, let me see, let me see the letter." So I wrote a letter back to the county, the prosecutor's office, I think it was, and I said, I said, you know, first of all, of course, you can make this presumption, but it is rebuttable. So you're just wasting everybody's time. you know, and I said, but you should know that the purchase, the seller divested or indemnified us, the new owner, against any previous civil or criminal liability. Now, I just made that up. I don't know. I didn't see
That's
the
okay
purchase.
because they make it up everything up
I just made it
anyway.
up. And
Good for you.
I'll tell you why I did that because I gave like a little over a page of like reasons why they can't do this stuff. But the most important thing I put in there was that the seller divested or indemnified the buyer of any civil or criminal. Most purchase agreements don't do that. This one I said did it, and I was lying, but I told them that. So I get a letter back, and they didn't address any of the other issues, which were important legal issues. All they wanted to do was ask for a copy of the purchase agreement. And I wrote a letter back and I said, "You'll have to get a warrant for that. Stop bothering me."
Love it.
More or less is what I said. And that was the last we heard for 6 months. And it will be like that because it doesn't reach the threshold of conducting an investigation. They're just trying to be a bunch of bullies.
Bullies.
Yeah.
Bullies, you guys, if you're listening, watching this, if you have tax issues, if you have business issues, anything like that, contact aceofcoins.com because these companies are bullies. They just want your money.
Yeah.
They want your private information so that they want to keep track of you. So just don't do it. Just don't do it. Don't comply. I love it.
Most of the time. I mean, sometimes there's
Most of
things
the
you have to
time.
do, but just look at it. Don't be
Mhm.
afraid. Just look at what's going on and
No fear, you guys. They have
yeah.
trained us to live in
Yeah.
fear. They have trained us to live in fear. But when Amy has her hand up, so I'll go to her in a moment. But when you know that you're brought here, you guys, from a divine infinite creator, and our job, our kuleana, what we say in Hawaii is our kuleana. What is ours to do is to stand up for what you know to be right. What you know to be right, not easy, but right. So Amy, I'm going to unmute you. And you can ask your question. Oh, ask to unmute. So I'm asking to unmute. Oop, ask to unmute.
Doing.
Okay, we can hear you. Oh, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, this is Amy and Glenn.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
aloha.
Hey, John, we just came across your website recently. My wife and I just recently filed for a revocation of election, and and we both have our own personal LLC registered in the state of Indiana. I registered mine just last year, so there was never any tax filing on it yet. My wife's business, we've had tax filings for the last 5 years. Now that we're out of the FIT, do we need to keep filing state taxes for her LLC? And another question is, FinCen, like, how do we expect the banks to behave when we go to them and to open a new bank account if it has to do with like a UA or an LLC?
Okay, there's a bunch of questions there, but revocation of election is of no legal consequence to anyone. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't change anything. And then your LLC that runs a business doesn't need to file a tax return. It's a choice to make a tax treatment. You can do it or not. If you don't do it, you have by default a deferred structure. So you can choose to file a tax return or not. It has nothing to do with, I don't understand what you're saying about the FIT. What's that?
Yep, federal income tax.
Okay. Well, okay. So filing a tax return creates a duty to file a tax return. Filing a tax return creates a tax liability. If you don't file, then you don't have a tax liability. Where people get confused is that they've been filing for years and they stop filing and they don't understand what's going on. And so the IRS attacks them because they don't understand how it works. So you can stop filing if you meet, there's certain criteria you can do. You don't need to send letters to the IRS. You don't have to do this other nonsense, revocation of election. That doesn't do anything.
Because
You
I
just
have done that too myself. I have done
Yeah.
revocation of election as well.
Yeah, when I stopped filing in 93, and I have a high income, okay? When I stopped filing, I didn't do anything. I didn't send a letter to the IRS. I just stopped filing because I arranged my affairs so that I don't have a taxable gain. It's very simple. And yeah, I use dollars, but I have credit cards, I have bank accounts, I can do what I want. I just don't file because there's no need to in my situation. Now, if I have wages at a job, okay, the IRS is going to say, hey, give us our cut. But I make my money as basically an independent contractor, okay, investor or whatever. So, but I don't know if that answers your question. But as far as FinCen goes, that really doesn't, it doesn't affect you unless you're going, if you're having banking or corporate interests in other countries as a U.S. citizen, where the country has a treaty with the, information sharing with the United States, then you'll have issues with Financial Crimes Network.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's why I say you don't need to go offshore for anything. The way I help people avoid risk or financial risk or tax liability is by simply changing the property rights. And an easy way to do it is with a limited liability company in the membership. If you have an LLC where you're the single member owner, or you and your spouse are the owners of it, it's still a single member. There's no protection whatsoever. If you're only doing that, you're only going to get titling. Like, for example, I can retitle a 1099 income with a single member LLC, no problem. That works great. So now my 1099 income, it could be any amount of money, will not create a tax liability for me individually. It's better to have a multiple member LLC, not husband and wife, but it's got to be like, two people that are not married, put it that way. Or it can be an innocent party. It can be a trust. It can be a private membership association. It can be an unincorporated association, which is an example. A PMA is an example of that.
I have a PMA.
Yeah.
I have a PMA,
Yeah.
and so if you go to my website, blossominnerwellness.com, you actually won't get access to anything, including the store, unless you sign my private membership association agreement.
Yeah, that's one way to do it. Also, a PMA, we're all members of PMAs, okay? You don't need an instrument or a document to create a PMA, although you can do it that way. But I like to start my clients out with a PMA that represents their family. And they can just say, well, no, it's not my family. It's me and my two business partners. Okay, well, that's a PMA too. But it's a single entity, and it could be an entity or it could just be an association. So there's all kinds of ways to use it. A PMA can also operate like a trust, and it doesn't need to have a written instrument like an entity does. So there's a lot of aspects to a PMA that people aren't aware of, but I don't recommend using a PMA to do business with other people. I like to make the PMA the owner of a limited liability company because the LLC is recognized by statute and it can take on the liability. It's suited for that.
Can you say that last part one more time, John, please?
An LLC is suited to take on liability in interacting with banking institutions or third parties, business contracts, and things of that nature, owning real estate. I would not use the owner of the owner of an LLC, like a PMA. I would not use that to interact with, getting a bank account and so forth. So it doesn't matter what yeah, use the LLC for that purpose, but the owner of the LLC can be anything. It doesn't matter who the owner is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Did that answer your question, Glenn? So, okay. Anybody else that you have questions, please, you can raise your hand or you can put them in the chat. John, this is amazing. Anything else you want to share around FinCen or what's happening? Because what is happening with the dollar? Because for the last couple of years, it's always like the dollar is going to implode, and I know she's on her way because of how much money they have been printing out of absolutely nothing.
Okay, well,
but what's your take?
The dollar's been destroyed since its beginning. That would be go back to 1913. Okay, so we had a few revisions of the tax code which were really important. We had the revision of 1954, then you had 1986, I believe it was, and I believe there was one in the 30s. I forget now, but it doesn't matter. Then we had in 71 we got off the gold standard. So each of those times it was a way to perpetuate the use of the dollar. The dollar became something different, even though we called it the same. 2001, it became something different, but it's been crashing ever since. And it's going downhill real fast in the last few years. So we're watching it crash. Guys, don't wait for, there's no day that we're going to see something. We're watching it every day, okay? So bet against the dollar, buy more assets, invest now. Get your money, get your thinking out of just accumulating dollars and go get assets. Use other people's money to get assets. That's how you benefit from this system. That's how it's, in fact, that's how we're being exploited right now. People aren't doing that. Go get rich. Go make some money. That's how you beat the system.
So you're saying assets, gold and silver, those are included?
That helps, but I use that as a buffer from going between cash and real assets.
Okay.
Gold and silver is not really an asset in itself, even though it's something you can sell, just like a boat. And yeah, it doesn't really have depreciating value. It's kind of in between. But I would just recommend if you're not sure what to get into with your own cash, get into gold first, and then you can reallocate later. If you're going to be if you're going to be in cash for a while, like 6 months, just buy gold bullion. You know, just buy some gold bullion, buy some coins, buy some kilobars or something, then liquidate quickly and get into your asset. And then you don't need to put all your cash into an asset. You just put part of it. Even if you put all of it to begin with, you want to borrow out of it. So you want to use debt. You always want to use debt when you're acquiring assets. Most of the assets around us that we use every day are acquired with debt, other people's money.
That's true.
So that's how you beat the system, not writing stupid letters to the IRS.
So I'm definitely, I've definitely done that, you guys. Because the thing is I know that I'm in a system. I know that there's an enslaved system, and I've tried everything to just get out of it. But what I've been learning on the way has been invaluable. So I love that. We have a question from CR. It's what's important to include in a PMA agreement such as the one Michelle has. What? Let's see here. Oh, that's a different question. I'll ask the gold question in a moment. So the first question is, what's important to include in a private membership association agreement, such as the one Michelle has?
I'll give you an example. Let's say a partner and I get together and we do a joint venture. Let's say maybe he has a brick and mortar business and I have a website, and I can promote his products and he has foot traffic, and vice versa. We can benefit each other, right? So we start doing that. Now that's a private association. It's not open to the public. It's all private, and it's a partnership, but that's an example of a private membership association. It excludes certain things, people, whatever. The very important benefit of a PMA is that of what it excludes, not what it includes. That's how the case law works. So the important elements of a PMA would describe the most important elements of that relationship. It's a joint venture. We're doing this thing. We expect this much money. This person's responsible for this. This person's responsible for this. We hired this person. So maybe there's a board of directors, right? It could be something like that. So that would be described or defined in your actual written instrument if you want to write it up that way. Sometimes if you make a PMA to where the operation of something, okay, is done for the benefit of another, it operates as a trust. You just have to write it up that way. So you have a lot of versatility there. You can create an entity out of it if you want to. It can be viewed as a partnership. It can also be viewed as a trust if you want to make it into an entity. Sometimes it benefits you to do that. That helps you.
Oh, okay. Awesome. This was a good question with gold. When you buy gold, should you have an LLC to buy it?
It doesn't matter how you buy it.
Yeah,
I like to buy it and take possession of it. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Just buy it and take possession. Or if it's a lot of it and you don't want to take possession, put it into a vault service. Just be sure if it's with a third party, use an LLC, for example, or use a trust in the vault as the account holder. If you're taking possession, it doesn't matter until you sell it. So when you sell it, make sure that you identify that the seller is this entity. If you don't want the liability, like a 1099, make sure you're using an LLC or a trust or some other pass-through entity that you don't create a tax liability. So use a company to sell it. Buying it doesn't really matter unless you're using a third-party vault service.
Oh, that's a really great information. I did not know that.
Yeah, you can buy all day long. Nobody cares. But when you go to sell it, just be aware of how it's being reported if it's going to be.
If it's going to be reported. Yeah. The non-reporting part's always my favorite. So this CR asks, does Michelle really need to block access to parts of the website and exclude non-members to protect herself?
It is an element of operating a private association. So yeah, that would be an effective way of doing it. I would think so, yes.
Yeah, I would too, because Yeah, just for me, it's
Hmm.
it proves that I'm a private membership association. This is
Hmm.
not public. So it's actually part of the agreement of me being a private membership. And in the Constitution, we have a right to contract with other people. So that is away from
Well,
government.
the right to contract is not in the Constitution.
Oh, okay.
The right to enter into a contract is a private property right that allowed the Constitution to be written in the first place.
Okay,
So the right
there it is.
existed, yeah, the right existed before the creation of the Constitution. So we have always had that right.
I love it. And we always say we have so many more rights too that are from our
We have,
creator that they act like we don't
yeah,
have.
we have no rights from the Constitution. The Constitution is designed to limit the
Protect.
intrusion of those rights
Yeah,
by government. Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, the Constitution protects the rights. It doesn't give us our rights.
Hmm.
Yes. Okay, another question. There is also a company that accepts crypto for gold or silver. Does that enhance the privacy of the LLC, or do you need the LLC in this instance?
Well, in that case, you're out of dollars, so that's very
Mm,
useful. And no, you probably would not because you're not documenting anything that would be taxable. Now, if somebody is going to do something they don't need to do, like issue a 1099 for one of those transactions, like Bitcoin to gold or vice versa, that would be a reason to use an LLC. It's not necessary to use a 1099 in that situation, but you have all kinds of ignorance out there, even among professionals. So to protect myself, I just automatically assume people are going to give me a 1099. I don't even care. I just use an LLC for things like that. So it depends on who you're dealing with. I mean, if you know people well enough, then maybe you don't care. If you don't know them, ask them. Say, are you going to give a 1099 for this? So Bitcoin
good
to
question.
gold is, not a taxable transaction, but any accountants out there are going to scream and say, I'm crazy. We
Yeah,
can have this discussion, but so far I've been proven right. I mean, even the IRS agrees with me on the cryptos. So yeah.
yeah, yep, absolutely. And what I love about this too is, so many people just want to go with what is written down by these government agencies, and they don't do more research into, is it right? Is it lawful?
Or they
And
don't understand it.
they don't, yeah.
They just
So
don't understand
that's what I
basic
love
things. Yeah.
what you're about and what you're doing and how much you're supporting people, because a lot of times also by design we don't have time to research all of this. People sometimes are just trying to get food on the table for their kiki and just children, and so
Right. You
thank you
don't
for
have
all you do.
time.
Hmm.
I need the experts. I'm not going to learn how to fix my car. I'm not going to learn how to bake a cake or something. I'll have somebody else do that. But if you want to, I'll just mention this one thing. I like to like throw in a zinger once in a while, and maybe we can talk about this on another call because I think it's really compelling. It's a little bit off subject, but what I discovered recently is that family court. If you guys have had experience with that, I'm sorry. But let me tell you what's going on with family court. And I'm going to say, in every jurisdiction, here's what I discovered. Family court is being used for the total liquidation of the family estate.
Oh
So
gosh.
some of you may understand this and some may not. This is worse than the IRS. If you ever thought the IRS was bad, family court and the trial court judges are the worst. They are
Yeah.
pillaging the marital estate. The technical aspect of this, here's what we call it. They're using family court to conduct involuntary receiverships. That means when you file a petition for the declaration of a dissolution of marriage, which is the court's jurisdiction, equitable declaratory relief declares something to exist or not exist, right? That's it. They don't have the authority to tell you how to reallocate your money and property and who has what rights over the children because that's a conversion of a private property right. Child custody is a private property right. The court doesn't have it. You do. The
Yes.
court never has it unless there's abuse or neglect, and there has to be evidence of that, okay? But what they're doing in family court is the judges are using it to conduct involuntary receivership for the total liquidation of the family and marital estate to destroy the family's ability to accumulate wealth. And also it benefits the bank. For example, if the bank tricks you and if the court tricks you or coerces you into thinking you have to sell your house to split the equity, what's happening is the mortgage on the property is going to get paid off more quickly, and the
Mm.
bank's going to make a lot more money than if you just wrote out the contract. That's what's going on. I mean, that's just one small aspect of it,
Mhm.
not to mention all the other things that they do with attorney fees and everything else.
Yeah,
They're just
it's
simply imposing an involuntary receivership, which is the same as bankruptcy. Who wants to do a bankruptcy? All I did was ask the judge to declare a dissolution of marriage. That's
mhm.
the legal thing I need so I can separate, my finances from this person, right?
Yep.
I didn't ask you to rip apart my life and destroy my privacy and then tell me how to spend my money. I'll take care of my family. It's none of your business. But
Mhm.
that's what, we watch these things on TV and everyone has a tendency to mimic what they're seeing on TV and they think it's okay and they just accept it. But it's not. It's pillaging the family property.
Absolutely. I've always thought the marriage is a three-way with the state.
It
You
doesn't
don't,
have to be.
and also license. It's like when you have to get a license for something, it means you're not free to actually do something. You have to get a license for, and that this is just my
Yeah.
story that I make up my head around it because we have a couple more questions about this. In case of an adult dependent, can you claim them on your taxes even if they have social security? Oh, an adult dependent.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works. I would have to ask an account. I don't care about the counting rules. So I don't know about what claiming deductions and things like that. I would
Okay.
imagine yes, but that's a layman's perspective. And you would think, what the heck? I'm just talking about
Yeah.
all this stuff, but no, I don't care what the rules are. So as far as that goes, I care about financial risk. I don't know about the actual deductions and things like that. I rely on CPAs for that.
Okay, and then this one is from Matt. Hey, John, I unfortunately know fathers who refuse to support their children after divorce. The courts are the only way the mothers to get anything from them. How do you prevent those men from abusing your methods?
Well, that happens, and there are provisions in family court, and the court does have jurisdiction in cases of neglect. So if it constitutes neglect, then yeah, you could get the court involved and there has to be evidence of it. But I think you can establish that in those situations. I was watching a clip from an old movie that was portraying even in a previous time than the period film I was watching, and it was showing this one woman, and it was in the time in like the 1800s where women would wear these really elaborate dresses, right, and the hats and
Hmm.
all this stuff. And
Yeah.
I watched where one woman was introducing her friend to a detective and a private detective. And so they met him in his office, and she was saying, "My friend here, uh, her husband left, and he's not paying. He's not feeding the children, and she's on the farm by herself, right? He just left. I guess he just felt he just gave up or something, whatever." And so they went to a private detective, and they asked if they could have his help to convince the husband to help him out. I mean, that was their only remedy. And I thought, wow, okay, so it is useful to have some sort of police power, right? So the issue is neglect in that situation, but the private detective found the guy trashed at a bar, and went over there and said, "I understand you're not supporting your children anymore." And the guy says, "Yeah." The guy says, "Yeah, what of it? Like, what's the guy gonna do?" And he says, "Well, it is gentlemanly to go to support your children and your wife, even if you don't want to be there, you need to." He goes, "Yeah, whatever." And so the guy left. Like, okay, that just shows like, okay, I'm not sure if that really happened, but it's kind of a sad situation. But again, I think the court would have jurisdiction if the neglect could be established. I don't think that's a problem.
Yeah. And then he also asked how can the courts help when the father appears to be broke and has his money in an LLC? Very, very good questions. Very interesting.
Okay, here's the interesting thing in family court when there's neglect. Okay. Um, somebody has to pay the bills, right?
Mhm.
If you're paying your bills, it doesn't matter where you're getting the money. You can't hide stuff in an LLC, for example, because what's going to happen is the court's going to say you have to have certain amount of money to live in society, and you're going to have to take some of that money, and so that you can not neglect your family, your former wife, and your current children. You're going to have to do something. And by today's standards, you should be making, and by your educational and professional background, you should be making X amount of money. The court can do that, but there has to be a finding of neglect. There has to be an
Mhm.
evidentiary hearing. I think a lot of times the courts overreach and they just do it anyways. But yeah, there has to be evidence of neglect, which I think is not too difficult to establish. But the court can establish a standard and then say, look, either you're going to do that or we're going to hold you in contempt.
Mhm.
And yeah, sure, there could be a situation where the person just disappears and is homeless or something, or just disappears. I mean,
Mhm.
sure. And it's a sad situation, but you're not going to be able to protect everything. Government cannot solve every problem.
No, absolutely not. Okay, cool. Well, I just want to let everybody know, so much mahalo for joining. If this is going to go on my YouTube channel, so that is Blossom Inner Wellness, Blossom Inner Wellness. And yes, and if you're watching on YouTube or on the radio, please go to standtogetherhawaii.com. You can join us there, or like and subscribe, and definitely check out John and his Ace of Coins. If you have any other questions, if you again want to learn how to lower or eliminate your taxes in a lawful way, license your biometric data, and buy Bitcoin tax-free. And I do want to let people know I'm wearing this sweatshirt, and then I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this part says alcoholic, and then people don't understand what this word is. And then it has the Hawaiian Islands on it. This is called va aholic, and this va means your canoe.
Oh,
So
okay.
canoeaholic. So I do some paddling, and so it says under the sea. I can't remember what that word is, but anyway, I was like, oh my gosh, I just have a shirt that says alcoholic on it. So
Who would
it
know
means
that? Glad you
canoeaholic.
explained it.
Okay, you guys.
Yeah.
So much all over that. John, anything else you want to share?
No, but thank you. And I think I don't want to get off track, but I know that that's a very compelling subject, and there's a lot to understand there. But a lot of problems can be avoided with a postnuptial agreement. And what I'm teaching people is how to avoid dealing with the trial court in a marriage arrangement. We can do that. We can have a postnuptial agreement that has nothing to do with preventing either spouse from getting access to property. But what we can do is use a postnuptial agreement for asset protection, estate planning, third parties, and removing the court from the marriage. And having a marriage license doesn't give the court jurisdiction, it's residency. Whenever you see a pleading for divorce, it has to do with residency, not whether or not a person has a license. So that was
Wow.
an interesting thing. Yeah.
Okay. That
But
is
thank you so
interesting.
much, Michelle.
All right, let's do a prayer, you guys, because that's what we're all about here on Aloha in Hawaii. Great Spirit, infinite intelligence of all things. There's so much going on in the world right now, and we just know that you are beating our hearts, every single person around the planet. You are breathing every single person's body. Right now, there's billions of processes happening in everybody's body, and all of our cells know what to do, and that is through you, infinite creator of all things. You are growing the plants. You know how to germinate these small little seeds up against the black, dark, cold soil, and you know how to grow it to the light, that one day it pops out of the soil and it feels that warmth of the sun shining on it. That is with each and every one of us, that each and every one of us, through you, Great Spirit, knows what is our kuleana, what is ours to do in this moment today, in this time in history. And that we each are brave enough to do what is right, not what is easy, but what is right. And we just send so much appreciation to John Singleton and Ace of Coins that has helped so many people around the world to have more money, to have more freedom, to understand their rights that are unalienable from you, Great Spirit, that nobody can take away, that the Constitution protects, does not give, because we already have them. So we just send him so much appreciation, and that anybody right now who hears this message and they need just a spark of hope that things could be better, that they have it right now within them. And that spark of hope just goes out like the wave of an ocean, and it just surrounds the entire planet, knowing that each one of us has, again, one heart that is beating right now, this infinite intelligence that knows exactly how to pump a gallon of blood through the body per minute. And it's happening with each person on the planet, and we are beating with one heartbeat of humanity. This planet is free, this planet is sovereign, that all people are in harmony, together, unified, knowing that all people matter around the world, and that every single child goes to bed with a full belly, knowing that they are loved beyond measure. And so it is.
Amen. Thank you.
Mahalo so
Thank you,
much,
Michelle.
everyone, for joining blossominnerwellness.com, and mahalo again, John, because you are amazing.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate the interview.